there is a general misunderstanding of what speed actually is. And to me, and I've said this, I think actually on this podcast before, that speed is the most misunderstood and misused of all training adaptations.
Oh, yeah?
And I think by a long shot.
What do you mean it's misunderstood?
So what I mean by that is people generally don't understand what true speed training is and why that actually matters. And so people think they're doing speed, but they're not actually accomplishing those goals. And because of that, their performance is being limited, or they're not reaching their true potential because they haven't identified that into the spectrum.
Welcome to Barbell Shrugged. I'm Mike Bledsoe, standing here with Doug Larson and Andy Galpin, and we are up here in Orange County visiting PJ Nestler, strength coach, trains UFC fighters, and today we're going to be talking about speed. And I think a lot of people in our audience, a lot of coaches aren't training speed, or might be calling something speed that's not quite speed, and I think that's why we want to talk about this today.
Yeah, to chime in on that, there is a general misunderstanding of what speed actually is. And to me, and I've said this, I think actually on this podcast before, that speed is the most misunderstood and misused of all training adaptations.
Oh, yeah?
And I think by a long shot.
What do you mean it's misunderstood?
So what I mean by that is people generally don't understand what true speed training is and why that actually matters. And so people think they're doing speed, but they're not actually accomplishing those goals. And because of that, their performance is being limited, or they're not reaching their true potential because they haven't identified that into the spectrum. So just quickly, if we look at human performance, if we look at sport, if we look at health, and we look at our abilities over this huge spectrum, and if we start on one end with endurance, right? The furthest end of the endurance spectrum would be your ability to sustain action over 30, 60, 90, 200 hours, it doesn't matter, right? Sustained activity. As we slide from that spectrum more towards the middle of performance, we get to endurance, but maybe endurance with heavy, maybe endurance with intervals. This is more of a CrossFit AMRAM. This is these types of things. You get closer to that strength spectrum, and there's maybe even some strength endurance, and then you keep going and you're at true strength. Right? This would be like one repetition as heavy as you can do. Well, most people stop right there. And they'll play a bunch in those endurance ends. They'll do a bunch of different types of endurance, but they stop at the true end of this strength spectrum. They don't keep going to still not tired, but not heavy either, where I'm truly moving fast. And so most people think they're doing speed because they're doing things, trying to go fast, but they're getting tired. They're doing big volume, and that's not really truly speed work. And so because of that, I think they're missing a lot of the limitations for sport performance and even for general physiology. Yeah. Right? We were talking earlier about you want to be able to catch yourself from a fall. That's predicated by your speed. Your foot has to be able to get out in front of you in the right position. Now, once you get there, you have to have the eccentric strength to be able to brace the load to not land. But if your foot never got there in the first place, that's a speed issue. So the ability to just simply move fast but not tired and not with a bunch of repetitions, that's really speed work. And the problem with that is, and the reason why people generally don't do it is, you don't get tired. You don't leave the gym like smoked.
Yeah, a lot of times you don't feel like you did a lot.
Right.
If you just run a couple of 10-yard sprints with like a 2-minute break in between, you're going to walk away from 5 sprints and be like, I didn't do shit.
Right.
Yeah, people like to feel wrecked at the end or else they didn't do anything.
Right.
And one of the reasons we brought PJ in is because you are training UFC fighters and MMA fighters who probably don't, like, if they don't crawl out of the gym, they didn't feel like they put in a workout. So there's a psychological aspect here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the biggest things I see in my field is, everybody who comes to us, they want to just get smoked. They need to get crushed to get something out of it. And that's part of the educational piece for me, in working with athletes, working with MMA fighters, or working with anybody is understanding that there's different adaptations that we can train for, and you don't have to leave here feeling worse than you came in. A lot of times you come in and you can still leave here feeling great and you still got something out of it.
Right.
So, I think trying to get people to understand that is always a challenge early on, but they have to know what they're training for.
Right, and we can dig into some of those methods as we go through the show, but let's rewind for a second. What's your background? How'd you get into this? Who are you? Like, kind of just tell us about yourself.
Yeah, so I am a strength and conditioning coach. So I've been doing this for about 10 years now. Worked as a college strength and conditioning coach. I've worked as a personal trainer. I've worked in the private sector, and I now run a couple sports performance gyms in the private sector. And I primarily work with NFL, NHL, and MMA fighters at this point. But I've worked with everybody. I've trained little kids. I've trained older adults, and I worked with a lot of athletes from all different levels. And yeah, so I've been doing this for about 10 years, and this really what I do now is the education side of it as well. I educate a lot of coaches on how we do what we do so that they can understand how to train athletes and how to train people and get them better.
Yeah. Who's your favorite to train? If you were to pick one of those categories, who's your favorite? Like fighters, NFL guys, like kids?
I'm partial to fighters just because that's my favorite sport, but favorite to train would probably be NHL.
Oh, really?
Yeah, those guys. They show up a half an hour before you're supposed to train. They do all the stuff they're supposed to do. They've got their own foam rollers and equipment, and they do their mobility work. They're always on time. They always do what they're supposed to do. They're just very humble. They're not caught up in being famous and doing any of that. They come in, they do their work, and they're awesome. So dealing with other professional athletes, you can run into the guys with the egos who show up a half hour late and they're at the club last night, and NHL guys, I've never had a hockey player who doesn't show up and get his work done. So they're a lot of fun.
You started actually in as a Division I strength and conditioning coach.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So give the audience a little bit of a background between what the difference between being like a Division I or a private sector strength and conditioning coach is, and like if you ran a CrossFit gym or something like that. So how is that strength and conditioning different from a normal or a CrossFit strength and conditioning?
Yeah. So the biggest difference between collegiate and private sector is probably that collegiate, the teams are required to come to me. So I work with the coaches, and they send me the athletes, and I train team after team, and it's in a group setting. Whereas the private sector, obviously, people are paying to be here. So, I have to then recruit them to come here. I have to keep them here. I train them in a lot smaller groups. And then, similar to probably the difference between us and CrossFit is we do a lot more small group specialized training where, specific sport performance is the goal. Not as much larger group where fitness is the goal. So that's probably the biggest difference between what we do in the private sector strength and conditioning versus CrossFit.
So this is primarily individualized programming. Is almost everyone here have their own set workouts that you've written specifically for them?
Yes, every single person has their own workouts, and we'll have I train in small groups. So some of my fighters all train together. They all have a similar goal. We might be training for the World Championships, but each fighter's individual in what they need to get there and what they need to get better for that. So that's where they'll get individualizations for each of them.
Yeah, so fighters, given that the whole sport is trying to hurt somebody, they're often hurt. Probably more often than not. They're almost always hurt.
Yeah.
How do you program around that to make it where that you're able to give them some amount of progress, but you're not exacerbating any particular injury that they come in with?
Yeah,
and it changes every day.
For sure. That's huge. They are hurt always hurt. So I think, I tell fighters that that's one of the biggest things that I do is, anybody can write a program. I could hand you the program I'm going to write. The difference with training with me and doing my program is I'm going to modify every single thing because I understand what the goal was. So if you came in here and your ankle's banged up, we're still going to get faster. We may not be jumping on that foot, but I'll find something else we can do to get to the adaptation we were looking for that day. So that's one of the biggest things is you have to know the fighter and you have to know what the goal is so that we can modify around it but still get to where we need it to be.
Yeah. How do you overcome, I guess, the psychological aspects behind doing speed work? People don't, like we were talking about earlier on, is I don't feel tired. And I know fighters are probably the most notorious for this. I mean, fighters and CrossFitters.
Yeah, it's going to be the same, right?
If you're not smoked, you're not enjoying it. How do you have those conversations with those athletes?
I think it starts with building trust early on, and then it's an educational piece. As you go through, it starts with giving them a little bit of what they really think they need. When they walk in the door, I'm going to give them a little bit of what they think it is, because if they just walk in and say, I want to get crushed and train, and then all we do is very low-level speed stuff, and they feel like it wasn't anything, they might not come back. And we're in the private sector. I got to get them to come back. So I have to give them a little bit of what they think they need, and then
so you're going to lie to them. You're gonna flat out lie to me.
Pretty much.
Gotcha.
Pretty
Lying,
much.
Lying
PJ.
is key in any
Key.
relationship.
Pretty
Watch
much.
Barbell Business, the next episode, lying to your clients. Sorry.
How to do
Yeah.
it successfully.
So you can continue to piece it in. You have to build that trust and give them a little bit of what they think they need and what they think it should look like. And as they start to trust you, you start to educate them on, hey, we don't need to leave here feeling dead, because I need you to, understand that this is probably the least important in what you do. You got to do all your other practices as well. So I want you to get faster and still go to jiu-jitsu tonight and be able to train and get something out of it.
I was talking to a coach earlier this week, and he was talking about he was putting a program in place, and an athlete was 5 days into it and was telling him, I really don't like this. He goes, oh, what's going on? Why don't you like it? And he goes, well, I'm just not as sore. So I don't think it's working. I mean, how do you handle that?
Yeah.
I mean, early on, if you're not completely wrecking somebody, and that can be dangerous if you're wrecking somebody in their first work of training to try to make them happy. Like, I guess you got to kind of ride that fine line.
And it's funny because dealing with fighters is a lot of them know that they don't want to come in and get smoked. They just think that they need it. So when you start to educate them on it, a lot of them are like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. All right,
Oh, thank God.
yeah, because they, some of the
amazing.
guys, they come here straight from sparring. They just sparred for 2 hours. They don't need to come in and push a sled back and forth for half an hour,
Right.
And they think they need it, but when they can trust me to say, hey, you don't need this, let's do something else, and then they feel better. And then, a lot of it is because I've worked with a lot of fighters now, they can kind of trust what I say. So they're like, oh, thank God. And, I can just step back, and I don't have to be crushed all weekend. And they know that there's times that I'm going to crush them. Those little times, I'll educate them beforehand and set that expectation. You're going to be sore tomorrow. My jiu-jitsu guys, none of them are competing right now. So we're doing some muscle endurance. And I said, you guys are going to be sore tomorrow. Take care of yourself. This is going to beat you up. But, I set that expectation at the beginning, what it should feel like during the workout, what it should feel like after the workout, and what you should feel like tomorrow. And because they know that was the goal the whole time, then they're not as worried about it.
Yeah, I like that.
How would you modify that? So say you're not a professional athlete, you got a normal client, maybe they only get to work out 3 times a week, maybe 4, but maybe by the end of this podcast you convince them to do some more speed work. But they don't want to be like, hey, I got 3 times a week to work out. I can't just leave the gym not burning some calories, not getting tired. How could they integrate the speed stuff but still get that fix in the communication? Because they're not going to go do sparring. They only got 3 times a week they can work out.
Right. I mean, I think, a lot of the people that I work with will incorporate some of that speed stuff early on, and that doesn't mean you have to have just a speed day. If you're a professional athlete and you're looking to peak at the highest level, then we need to be really specific on what days, what we're targeting and what we're focusing on. But, we use more of a mixed program for someone who's just looking to be fit, move better, feel better. So they can do some of their speed work early on. But, again, the goal is just understand what the purpose of that is. If we're doing speed work at the beginning of the workout when we're fresh, we can still get into speed adaptation, and then you can still throw some stuff in later on, and it's not going to take away from that, but that piece can still be speed work.
Later on in the workout, in that same workout.
Yeah, later on in the workout, you can still do something that is going to get you a little more tired. But again, your ultimate goal is not to be running a 100-meter dash in the Olympics. So, as long as you know that everything doesn't have to be super fatiguing and everything doesn't have to crush you. Just pick the times when we do need to get crushed, and then know that there's other things we can train for throughout that workout. Or, maybe we have one day that we have a different focus. Speed is the focus that day.
So a lot of folks in the CrossFit space, they hear speed work and they think like, oh, I'm doing snatches. That's speed work. So I'm moving something as fast as I possibly can. I'm doing a single rep, so that counts as speed work. But in your case, what are you referring to when you talk about speed work? What are examples of exercises? Like, how do you incorporate that speed work into your programming? Like, can you give us like a tangible example of what speed work looks like?
Yeah, so speed work, I mean, on the continuum, speed work is going to be something that's completely unloaded and that's really, really fast. Mm-hmm. So for us, because we're dealing with athletes, a lot of speed work is going to be running, sprinting, jumping, anything unloaded where we're going to be moving really, really fast. Or we'll do some stuff on the speed strength continuum where it's going to be, the focus is still speed and it's going to be very, very low resistance. So that's
like
where
light med ball throws and things like that.
Absolutely, yeah. Unloaded plyometrics or very light loaded plyometrics, medicine ball throws, jumping, bounding. We do a lot of band resisted stuff. Mm-hmm. So we'll incorporate bands where we can still really focus on speed, but we'll still do speed work with the bar. As long as we get under the bar, but we know that the focus is we're going to do a couple reps. we're going to move the bar as fast as we possibly can, and then we're going to shut it down, and we're going to rest, and we're going to do it again, and we'll get a lot of sets of just moving that bar fast, and you should feel great when we're done because we're really not taxing you that much, but we got what we wanted out of it.
Are you talking like jump squats with a bar, or just like
yeah, it could be jump squats, or it could even be just regular movements. We'll do, Bulgarian split squats is one of the movements I use a lot with some of my hockey players and some of my fighters, because we don't do a ton of loaded back squatting stuff. So many of them are jacked up, and I have such a short window. I got to find different ways that I can load them. So we'll do Bulgarian split squats, and we'll do speed focused on those, and sometimes I'll add band resistance for it. So we get a little bit of resistance as they go, but the focus is still speed. How fast you can move through those reps.
I'd imagine most of the fighters that come in, they want speed for increased punching power or like explosive takedowns, things like that. Like, what do people most commonly come in and say, hey, I want to get faster for these reasons?
In particular fighters or just in general?
In general, but I happen to really like MMA, so I like to hear about the fighters.
Right.
But yeah.
The fighters, they want to throw faster kicks, they want to throw faster punches, and they want to throw them harder. So they think speed is also power, throwing it harder and more powerful. So I do get a lot of fighters who need to move faster. Some of the fighters who come to me and they're getting stuck. They don't get in and out fast, so they need, they think of foot speed is actually speed. That will translate into moving in and out faster. But so that's usually what the fighters want in terms of that. And then any other athletes, they just want to run faster. They want to be the fastest one on the team. They want to get to the ball faster. They want to get across the finish line faster. Whatever it is, they want to do it a step ahead of everybody else. And sometimes that's linear speed. Sometimes that's change of direction. Sometimes they don't know what that speed actually is. But that's usually what they want. They want to get there a step ahead of their opponent in whatever that is.
Yeah. My strength coach that I grew up training with, he trains a UFC fighter who I won't mention his name on the show. We can talk about it afterward. But he's primarily a jiu-jitsu guy. No explosive power whatsoever. Like his vertical jump's like 8 inches. but he's a UFC fighter. Like he was probably top 10 in the world at one point. But like is just not strong and not fast. And that, in my opinion, is like one of the major things that's limited him. Like he's really good at jiu-jitsu, and that's great. But like if everyone else is really good at jiu-jitsu too, and you're not very strong and you're not very powerful, well, now you're at a super disadvantage because you're just not as athletic.
Absolutely, and that's going to be a limiting factor in anything because, I train a lot of jiu-jitsu fighters as well, and I see that a lot. They're not very explosive. I have a lot of them. They're really strong, but they don't produce force very quickly. And for jiu-jitsu itself, that's actually okay because it's a sport that they're grappling. They're on the ground. They're usually connected the whole time, so they don't necessarily have to be able to produce that much force. But in MMA, they start on their feet. So if you have an MMA fighter, they have to be able to move in and out quickly. They have to be able to exert power very fast. It's such a dynamic sport. So if you're going into that not that strong, not that athletic, and not that fast, you're going to get caught. And that's where we see, now that we're seeing more and more athletes in that sport, the guys who are starting to dominate, the Demetrius Johnsons of the world, the Conor McGregors of the world, they're fast. They're really fast, and they're fast the whole time. Yeah. So
how would that be important, or why would that be important for not MMA? Pick your example, weightlifter, powerlifter, CrossFitter, normal person. Why would they ever need to be able to run 5 meters fast, change direction, and come back? Why is that ever going to help a powerlifter or a normal person?
Especially in weightlifting and CrossFit, the ability to exert that force fast is going to, especially in a CrossFit competition. If we train people think, I train an endurance runner. What would be the best way to get them better? Well, we need to improve their ability to run longer distances. But in reality, there's nothing I can do in the gym that's going to improve that. Yeah. So the only thing I can really do for a long distance runner is allow them to exert a little bit more force into the ground with every single step, which makes it just a little bit less work that they have to do. And therefore, it's going to be a little bit less fatiguing, and they'll get there a little bit faster. So same thing for a CrossFitter. If they're competing in the CrossFit Games, a lot of that stuff is they have to be able to do it for a long time. But if you could do each one of those reps a little bit faster, and it takes just a little bit less work to get there, you're going to get to that end goal a lot faster and conserve a lot more energy for whatever that next piece is.
Right.
If someone hasn't done a lot of speed work lately and they wanted to just kind of take their first few baby steps into the world of speed, so to speak, like what's a good like beginner workout for someone who's not really done much speed work before? Say they want to be able to run faster, like they're a soccer player or something like that.
So step one for anybody that I work with is deceleration training. And deceleration training is great for anybody because most people don't do it. So because you don't focus on it, we've got that potential gap where we can improve really quickly, and it sets the framework for any other speed and power stuff we're going to do later. And that'll translate into your Olympic lifting, that'll translate into your running, jumping, whatever it is. So we do a lot of deceleration training to teach you how to absorb your body weight and absorb forces in different directions and in the right positions, and to set you up for success when we need to then exert that power later on.
Right.
Yeah. Let's take a break real quick. I want to get into what the deceleration training looks like.
Okay.
Cool. Welcome back to Technique Quad. I'm Doug Larson. I'm here with former UFC heavyweight champion Bas Rutten, and he's going to teach us how to win a bar fight.
Woo! Love it.
All right, so in a bar fight, if someone comes up to you and they get right up in your face like this, what do you do?
Now, the thing, if you have to make sure, understand first, if this is going to be serious. If you say, okay, his friends are backing up in the back, this guy needs to be canceled out really fast, really violently, so his friends are going to be intimidated. Headbutt is the best weapon for that. I just need a little bit of this. So if he stands close, the only thing I need to do is create a little distance by stepping back, bang, and right away hit to the face, and then just keep going and drop the guy down. Be crazy. I told my daughters, I say, just headbutt him in the face and be crazy. Beat the crazy bitch, because then you will never fight again. And that's what you do when you are in a bar fight. Somebody comes up close to you.
Not forehead to forehead, though. You're going forehead to the nose.
Forehead to the nose. It's very important. I'm standing here, normally I would always stand like this talking. You know, I listen, because this is my defense. If he would do something with a headbutt coming, I can't stop him. You know, so the trick is to hit.
You're standing like this on purpose?
Yeah, okay. Just like I'm talking to you, you know, like I'm defending myself now. But I'm just, you know, what's going on? Once he comes close, you want to hit the nose. If he loads up for a headbutt from me, load up and give me one, I do this. Okay. I lean forward and I let him hit his face into my head. Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
Okay, so what if someone comes up to you and they're pointing you on the chest?
Okay, what you do then, you say, don't do that again. And if you say that, of course they're going to do it again. And they do the same thing. It's a stupid thing. So he does it. I said, no, don't do that again. As soon as they do it again, grab the finger, go all the way back. They shouldn't have pushed you against the chest.
Okay, so maybe you're in an argument with somebody else, and one of his buddies runs up behind you and starts grabbing you and starts choking you.
Once you start choking, what you want to do, you want to make sure that he doesn't pull his shoulder back and put you against his back. So right away, what you want to do is step to the side, step behind him, and now, whoop, I can lift him, and I can drop him, or I can drop on him. And on the street, that's not going to be fun for him.
All right, 3 ways to keep yourself out of a bar fight. Thanks, boss.
You're very welcome.
You bet.
Godspeed.
Cool.
Party on.
All right, welcome back. Here with PJ Nestler, and we're just about to get in some deceleration.
Desalination, I think is the word.
Desalination, yeah.
We're in SoCal, we're running out of water.
Desalination.
We have a salt problem.
Yeah, what is that, and how do we use it?
Yeah, so
Great one.
So deceleration training is basically slowing down. You know, that's what I tell athletes. It's slowing down, and you know, one of the quotes I usually tell them is uncontrollable power is unusable power, or uncontrollable speed is unusable speed. So, you know, a lot of people focus on how fast they can run, how high they can jump, but they never focus on stopping. And, you know, if you can drive your car 100 miles per hour, but you can only stop it at 50, you're definitely not going 100 for very long. Or you're going through the wall. So, you know, we start them off with really, really basic drills that, you know, again, seem simple, just like speed training. It's not going to smoke you. That's not the point. And we'll start them off on 2 legs and just teaching them how to pull their body down into different positions and, you know, use the right muscles to stop their body from moving and set them up to be in the right position to then produce force. So if it's, you know, changing direction, sprinting, jumping, whatever it is, you know, we teach them to be really active in that deceleration, not just jump and land, but actually focus on pulling their body into that position so they can then get ready to explode out.
The forces are often higher during deceleration than during acceleration. So landing from a jump or going to change directions, you're going one way, you got to decelerate, stop, and then go the other way. Like the deceleration phase is oftentimes where the forces are higher, which means that the risk of injury goes up, especially if the forces are so high that you have to compensate during deceleration. That's why when people tear the ACL, oftentimes it's like they're going to cut, they have to decelerate, and then it kind of overloads their system, so to speak. Knee dives in, tear their ACL, and a million other injuries that can happen in a very similar manner. So knowing that deceleration is where the forces get higher is a very good rationale, kind of as you said, to make sure the brakes work before you start to hit the gas pedal, so to speak.
Absolutely.
This is akin to doing a snatch balance. This is akin to working on your catching position in weightlifting, right? This is if you were to do some snatch drops or drop move stuff, and your focus was on to decelerate the bar on the way down or to catch it in the best position. That's one example how weightlifters use deceleration.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
you're using a similar movement, but then you're saying, okay, let's make sure that we can apply this ability to decelerate to non-linear, non-one space movements. So
Right.
can I use this and then turn and then twist, and can I use this and jump and react and go in different ways?
Right. And like you said, it's about absorbing the forces the right way and using the right muscles. And sometimes we'll talk about kind of the leaking of forces or leaking of power. If they're not rigid in the right muscles and while absorbing with the others, then they're going to leak a lot of that force out. And that's where injuries are going to occur. All these non-contact ACL injuries are from landing or cutting in the wrong way because of how much force is coming down. So, if you can't absorb that the right way, you're setting yourself up for a really, really high potential for injury. And you're leaving a lot on the table in terms of your performance. Because the forces are so much more, if we focus on that, and if you send me an athlete and I never have you actually jump as high as you can or run as fast as you can, but all we work on is stopping and decelerating and all of that control, guaranteed you'll jump higher, you'll run faster. And because it's been left on the table, every coach that you've been working with has probably just been run faster, run faster, run faster, and no one ever focuses on it. So, it's such an easy thing that we can start to close that potential gap really quickly just by teaching these things, and it's going to set you up to be safer. Same thing goes for if you're competing in a CrossFit competition. If we're jumping up and down on a box, when I start getting into fatigue, now if I don't know how to decelerate my body properly, I'm not going to set myself up for enough power to keep going, and I'm going to use a lot more energy to do that same exact movement. So if we can do it more efficiently, then it's just going to make me save that gas tank for later on.
So what does the deceleration training look like for you? Like for jumping and landing or for changing direction? Like what does a drill look like for deceleration training?
So for jumping and landing, it can be, double leg or single leg, depending on where we're at. And usually it's really jumping, but not as high as you can. And the focus is just jump off the ground a little bit and then focus on the controlled landing. And I'll teach them exactly where their body needs to be, where their knees and ankles and torso should look like in that position. And then we'll do it. And we'll do it over time. We'll keep doing it. And then we'll change either the direction or we'll go onto one leg or, we'll go side to side, whatever we're going to do to advance that. Or we're going to increase the forces a little bit. So you now have to overcome more forces. And then same thing with sprinting. A lot of sprinting or change of direction is we're going to sprint to the 20-yard line. But when you get there, we're going to slow down like this, we're going to stop like this, and we're going to be in control every single time. And we kind of just program that with all of our athletes until they get to the point that it happens naturally. And they don't really realize, they think it's more just to have control over that, everybody going because it looks better and we have control over each segment. But then when I need to teach you how to make a high speed cut later on, you've already set yourself up to get in and out of that cut later.
So how many repetitions would they do? So you're going to do those. I'm going to walk in. I'm going to try this deceleration stuff. How many reps should I do?
So it's going to be very low reps, anywhere in the 3 to 6 range, depending on if it's double leg, single leg, how many sets we're doing. But it's low reps.
How many sets would we do?
We do, starting off, probably about 2 sets of 6 reps, and then we build up, again, depending on your level.
Yeah.
But, 2 sets, and we might get up to 4 or 5 sets. But I typically don't go anywhere over 8 reps unless I'm teaching technique. If I'm really just teaching you and it's really low level, we might do 8 to 10. But as soon as fatigue starts to set in, we've lost our focus. So we have to make sure that they're all really high quality reps. I'd rather get 10 sets of 3 good ones than 3 sets of 10 where we start to get fatigued and we're not doing the things the right way.
What does fatigue look like? How are you spotting that? What are signs?
As soon as mechanics start to break down. So if they start to, let's say we're landing double leg and we start to see their torso collapse or we start to see their knees start to wobble or anything, if we're watching their normal pattern, they start landing on their toes and their knees are driving forward. So we know that they're an athlete who recruits a lot more of their quads to do the work. So they're going to land on their toes and they're going to shift forward because they want to use those quads to do the work. So as soon as that stuff starts to happen, we're going to break it down. I mean, if it's not perfect technique, then there's no reason for us to be doing it. So we have to stop. And it could be 3 reps for you. It could be 9 reps. Wherever that stops, we're stopping there, let you rest, and we'll get back and get some more perfect technique on that.
This is common with a lot of training. People are doing reps that are 85% there, and either the coach isn't stopping them. You're seeing like, oh, they're good enough. And the older I've gotten and the more I've trained people and the more I've trained myself is like, if you're not 99% there, then I'm like shutting it down because every repetition you're that much closer to an injury. And the point of being in the gym is to be creating good movement patterns so that you will move better in an athletic environment. It's like this is the place where you should be practicing to move well. Like this isn't
Absolutely.
the place to do shitty movement. Like if you're competing and things start falling apart, that's the place to do it, not in here.
Right, because you have an end goal. You know,
Right.
you got to get across the line, and at that point, get there however you need to get there. If you're the first one across the line, nobody's going to look back at what your technique looked like halfway through.
When you win,
Right.
yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
But when you're in here, you know, we have to train those movement patterns the right way. And, you know, again, we're going back to speed training. I tell most of my athletes, if you are not at 93, 95% plus, we're not getting nothing out of it. So, you know, when you come in, if you're fatigued when you walk in the door, which a lot of my fighters are, and our goal is speed and power, we're not doing it today. Because you come in and you're, you know, I test their jumps when they come in just to see where they're at. If you've significantly fatigued, you're not going to be running at 95, 100%. You're
Gulo,
not going
right?
to be.
Gulo.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, yeah.
So if you're not running, jumping, or doing whatever at full speed, then we're not speed training.
If it's
So-
a speed day, yeah.
If it's a speed day. So
How are you testing them?
so I do a counter movement jump when they come in. So I have a jump mat. They'll come in, and I've kind of set a baseline, and we'll just do a couple jumps, and we'll see, you know, how their nervous system is firing and if they're fatigued. You know, if their average is 20 inches and all of a sudden they come in and they're jumping 16, I'm like, well, what's going on? Well, I sparred for 3 hours today. And a lot of it is subjective as well. You know, it's not
Right.
all the numbers on the board, but, you know, I got to kind of paint the big picture of how they're feeling, how much they trained, and then use that. But that's the important thing is if the goal is speed training, if the goal is positional integrity, then we have to remember that's the goal. And that extra rep, if we're losing that and we're compensating, then it doesn't help. It's actually going to hurt.
What's a normal range, though? So say someone wanted to use that vertical jump test. Now, you're not going to jump the exact same. It's not going to be 20 every single day.
Right.
So if they're 17, is that bad? Is it 19 that bad? 10? Like, where's that line generally where you're like, okay, I think something's going on here versus just variability between the day?
I'll usually look at it at least like 90%, 85 to 90%. And if they're jumping under 90, I'm looking at it, you know.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll do another one, just see where they're at. Maybe they didn't jump. You know, sometimes you have to tell them, like, jump as hard as you can or this doesn't work.
Right.
But, yeah, we're looking at anywhere from, you know, if they're getting more than a 10% drop-off, then we're probably not getting anything out of that speed training. So
I'd imagine in extreme cases you might just say, hey, man, you're fucking fried, just take the day off. But in lesser cases, maybe that person has normally a 20 and they jump a 17. You go, okay, no speed work today, but there's still plenty we can do to get better. And then do you just alter the programming in that case?
yeah, absolutely. Very, very, very rarely do I send somebody home. It has happened, and that was because the guy just wasn't sleeping. He was working overnight, and he'd come in, and you know he hadn't slept in a week, and I was like, just go home and sleep. There's nothing we can do here. You need to sleep. That's it. But I mean, I'll alter it every time because there's plenty we can do. We'll just kind of go down the spectrum. Maybe we can do a little bit of strength work. You know, probably not maximum strength, but we can still do some strength work. We can certainly still do some mobility work and some recovery work. We can do some low-level drills where we're working technical stuff. You know, we can do a lot of corrective exercise stuff. So there's plenty we can do to get better, and you know, especially dealing with, I mean, anybody, any competitive athlete or just general population. There's so many issues they have. You know, we were just talking about how we're all broken. There's something we can do. You know, there's something we.
You're letting out our secrets.
You know, when I come in here, I want to run and jump as fast as I can, but there's plenty of other things I can do that are going to help me and set me up for long-term success. So,
Yeah.
Can you go really, really detailed, like hyper-specific? I know there's a lot of caveats. It depends on the level, but just give me one example of, I want to do a speed day. I've done some of this stuff before. I'm intermediate, committing. Like, walk me through the whole day, sets, reps, the exercise. Walk me through it. I want to do more of this stuff. I have some experience, but give me the whole shebang.
Yeah, so I'll give you an example of a speed power type day that I have with my fighters right now, which is walk in the door. We're going to do our testing and make sure we're good to go. We'll go through a general dynamic warm-up, and then we'll get into a more specific part of the warm-up. We're going to do some rapid jumps or sprints where we're really going to make sure that the nervous system is firing as fast as it can be because, again, we have to be firing at 95 to 100% to get anything out of it. And then we'll get into some plyometrics and whatever the plyometrics are for the day. So, for example, today, one of my fighters is going to come in and we're going to do some single leg plyometrics, and it's going to be some bounding drills.
So one leg to the other leg to the other leg to the other leg, right?
And the goal is getting off the ground as fast as we can and producing as much force as you can. We're going to go for 20 yards of that. And
okay, so that would be like maybe 5 or 10 bounds or something like that.
And then we're going to rest. So that might take anywhere from, that whole bounding drill is going to take 5 seconds.
Yeah.
And then, she'll walk back and we'll recover for 30 seconds or so. And usually I'll engage them in a conversation because they want to go right away. They want to go right away. And then we'll do another rep. So we'll do probably about 4 reps of that. And
4 total.
4 total. And that's a set.
Yeah.
So we'll go 4 total, 20 yards, shut it down. And then we'll get into, usually I like to pair into my plyometrics, maybe more of an upper body one. So then we'll go over and we'll do something medicine ball. So she's going to do a medicine ball rotational toss. And we're really working on speed and power. So it's going to be a really light medicine ball. And she's just going to throw it as fast as she can. And we're doing 4 reps on each side.
Can you describe quickly the movements for those that are just listening here? What would that rotational throw look like?
Yeah, so she's going to start, facing, perpendicular to the wall.
Yeah.
She'll start the ball on her outside hip away from the wall, and then she's going to rotate that outside hip towards the wall as fast as she can. I like to tell them like she's throwing her pocket at the wall.
Yeah.
And just transition all that speed and power into the ball, and then release it directly at the wall, in a nice straight line. So and again, I like to cue to try to break that ball against the wall. So every rep, you got to have that intent.
How many reps?
She's going to go 4 on each side. And then I'll usually pair in that as some kind of active rest, again, to keep her doing something. We'll do a core exercise, or we'll do a mobility drill, or I'll just give her active rest, and we'll go 3 or 4 sets of that today.
So that would be like total of 12 to 16 reps.
Yep.
Total.
And one of those is more of an upper body focus, whereas the other one's more lower body focus. Right. And then we're going to get into more speed strength. So we're going to do some stuff in the weight room, but the only resistance she's going to have is the bar and some bands.
Yeah.
And we're going to do, again, she's going to do a landmine press. She's going to have a band attached to it on her foot, and she's going to just punch the band up as fast as she can for 6 reps. And we're going to shut it down. And I'm going to shut it down anywhere. So if it starts to slow down, she's done. 3 reps, done.
Even if it's good technique, but just starts slowing down.
If the speed slows down, we're done. We've lost our training effect, so it's done. Now, because we're using a very light band, she's going to be able to do it for 6 reps. But again, the goal is speed. Yeah. So
there's a possibility here where someone might be thinking, well, if I did that, I'd get out of shape. Right, not understanding the context here. You're just talking about the speed part of your workouts. You still do strength training. You still do stuff to build muscle mass. You still do conditioning. Like, this is just one aspect of a more comprehensive program that you're doing for your athletes.
Absolutely, yeah. So I mean, on our other day, we're doing a lot more strength training. At this point in camp, because she's getting ready to fight really soon, we're not doing nearly as much. I'm not trying to do the conditioning, but outside of that camp, if we were doing a lot more, then yeah, we're still doing conditioning. I mean. At the end of the program today, we were still going to do some conditioning. She's going to spar, so we're not going to, but it's still there. So if that bucket's not full and we still need conditioning, we're going to get it in. But the focus is going to be speed and power right now.
And you just can't combine the speed and power stuff. Literally combine it with the conditioning.
Exactly.
Because that's a different thing.
Exactly.
That's speed conditioning. You're looking for maximal speed versus speed conditioning.
Yes.
Right. That's a different thing.
Yep. And there's something to be said there too, because we have to be fast when we're fatigued.
Yeah.
So there's times when we're doing our conditioning, we still may have a secondary focus of speed. We're looking at positional integrity and speed. And, because it doesn't help me very much if by the time I get a little tiny bit fatigued, all technique breaks down, all my positions break down. Well, that's what's going to carry over into what you're doing in your sport or in daily life, or in your competition. So,
right.
But yeah, when you're in the speed, that's the focus.
Okay, so those 3, you had a leg bounding one, a medicine ball throw, and then a single iron landmine. And is that it for the day?
No, and then we're going to do a hip dominant movement. We're actually going to do a contrasting set. So we're going to do
what's contrasting? Yeah.
So contrasting is another method that I use, and this one's not as much of a contrast as what I normally would use. But contrasting is when we use a heavy loaded movement into a fast explosive movement of the same movement pattern. So what we're trying to do is we're taking advantage of post-activation potentiation, which is basically we're using the heavy loaded movement to recruit more motor units and recruit more muscle fibers to do the work. And then when I step out and I go into my unloaded movement, I'm going to have a lot more, all those motor units and everything are activated to generate more power. So I'm going to get a training effect at a higher rate. So again, if I can jump 30 inches and I go do a heavy squat and I recruit more muscle units, and now I'm doing my jumps at 30.5, now I've got some training reps at a higher threshold, and my body's going to start to adapt to that, and very soon I'm jumping 32 inches.
Right.
So the set would be heavy squat followed immediately by jumps, and then you take your rest break.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. So we give a very small window of rest. I'll give them 20 seconds, catch your breath, get ready, and then go, and we'll get our jumps. So a squat and a squat jump would be one that we use a lot.
Yeah.
And it's maybe 2 or 3 reps on our squat, step out, and we're probably going 4 jumps.
Mm-hmm.
And I usually don't go over 5 at the most when it comes to that stuff, because we've already kind of pre-fatigued you on that squat.
Mm-hmm.
So we're just looking for a couple really, really fast, perfect reps.
Yeah.
And then we'll shut it down for 2 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll take our time, 3 minutes maybe, depending on what we're doing. Take our time, we'll recover, and I'll throw other stuff in there. Again, we can throw plenty of non-fatiguing stuff in there.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll do some neck work, or we'll do some core training, or ankle mobility, whatever we need to work on for that specific athlete. But and then we'll get a couple more really good sets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like having an effective use of a rest interval where you're not just standing around doing nothing. If you're doing heavy squats, there's no reason you can't go stretch your shoulders or do something else where you're being productive and you're not just kind of wasting time.
Exactly. Yeah, and there's a lot of in our other facility, I had a lot of Olympic weightlifters who would use our spot because we had bumper plates and platforms and everything. And I'd watch them, and they'd do a rep, and then they're just sitting there for 6 minutes. And for me,
that's like the culture.
Yeah,
and
totally.
Yeah,
4.5 hour workout. Right?
Exactly. And you'd be there for 3 hours, which is fine. If you've got the time, absolutely. Take advantage of it, take your rest.
Yeah.
But
there's nothing wrong with just kicking it in the gym,
No.
hanging out.
Yeah,
No.
yeah,
My favorite thing to do.
Yeah.
yeah. But with my athletes, we've got such a limited window. I got to find something that we can get in there.
Right.
And there's plenty of stuff we can work in. And most people, they don't have 3 hours in the gym. So, if you got to shorten it up, you could still get those Olympic lifts in, and then work on some ankle mobility and some other stuff you can do in between, still get a maximum rest, but get a lot more stuff done in that hour that you have in the gym.
Right. What were some more examples of the heavy set followed by the speed set?
So another one that I really like is we'll do some heavy sled work. So we'll maybe do a heavy sled push into a sprint. So again, more with sprinting athletes, but we can do something heavy where they really have to drive that sled, and then we'll use that same exact movement pattern and accelerate. So we're same positions, move that heavy sled, and we'll go short interval. It's probably 5 to 10 yards, and then step out. We'll get set up again, and we'll go a 10-yard sprint.
Oh, yeah.
And we'll shut it down.
Probably awesome for football players and similar athletes.
Yeah, we used to do it a lot with our NFL Combine athletes
Uh-huh.
because we're training for them. We're trying to peak their speed and power to run the 40-yard dash and do their vertical jump and all that. So we did a lot of contrast stuff with them with their speed training later on to really peak them and get them ready for their Combine competition.
Any examples of upper body or rotational ways you could do that?
Yeah, so in upper body, bench press is always the easiest one.
Yeah.
But one of the ones I'm using now, because I have to get really creative, I don't have a ton of equipment in terms of all the other little bells and whistles, so I like to get creative. So we're doing actually we could do a heavy loaded pull-up.
Yeah.
Or we're doing an isometric pull-up where she's actually just holding at the top, and I'm pulling down as hard as I can, and she's holding that position. And then we'll drop right down, and we'll either do an explosive band pull down, or we'll do a medicine ball slam. So trying to use that kind of same movement pattern, same principles, same muscles to do that work. And we went from that heavy loaded pull-up into an explosive medicine ball, or same thing with pushing. We'll do a heavy bench press set, and then they'll go right into an explosive clap push-up or a medicine ball chest pass, something that's very, very light loaded and fast. But one of the things I see with the push-up too is a lot of times athletes don't have the strength to be able to do that as fast. So we'll even elevate their hands onto a box or put a band around their chest up attached to the pull-up rack. So it's going to deload some of that weight because, if they're barely getting off the ground, it's speed focus.
Yeah.
So if they're just going heavy bench press and then they can barely get off the ground on the push-up, we're not getting where we need to be.
Right. I feel like the heavy squat followed by some type of jumping or the heavy sled followed by sprinting, those are kind of obvious, like why you would want to be better at those things or be faster at those things. Like I want to jump higher, I want to run faster. That makes a whole lot of sense. But for the pull-up and then the explosive pull, like why would any athlete need to be explosive in upper body pulling?
I mean, in particular to the athletes I work with, which is a lot of fighters, they're pushing, pulling, twisting, jumping, running. So they need to be able to do all these things. They need to be able to do them fast. The difference between ripping my arm out when my opponent's pulling on it could make the difference between me getting submitted in an armbar or getting up and we continue to fight. So any of being able to move your body and fire all those different muscles rapidly is going to translate into sport. And, even little things like a soccer player, they've got to throw the ball in. They've got to turn their body fast. They've got to use all these muscles really, really quickly. So, I like to get outside the box and not do everything in a very sagittal plane, vertical, up and down squatting motion, because those are the easy ones. Bench pressing and squatting is easy. I don't try to get too far because you can go really far down the rabbit hole when it comes to contrast stuff, and all of a sudden you're not actually doing anything. And but because of the athletes I work with and the people I work with, they have to move so three-dimensional all over the place that we have to find some different ways that we can do that.
Yeah, I would challenge you this. You want to do more pull-ups? Want to get better at your kipping pull-ups? Have you ever done any upper body pulling speed stuff?
Exactly.
Generally, no. It's like, what do you mean? Like, okay, so you work on your upper body strength, you work on your upper body conditioning. Have you guys ever gotten faster there? Well, your ability to get up once, or as you mentioned earlier, if I get up there faster, I won't get as fatigued as fast with my multiple repetitions. I'll be able to do more repetitions. If people don't use speed training very much, like I said at the very beginning, almost no one uses upper body speed training, and almost no one uses upper body pulling speed training. You want to get better at your pull-ups? There you go.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's usually something that limits a lot of people. That's like the thing they need to get better at if they want to be competitive and CrossFit specifically.
Right.
And a lot of people are trying to get better at those. They just do more and more pull-ups, which is great. That's a part of it. I was training my brother who's getting ready for the military, and he had to do his pull-up test, and he just had to do all these pull-ups every day. And I said, yeah, that's good, but let's attack it from a couple different angles. Let's do a day that's heavy loaded pull-ups. So we get you a lot stronger. Now 10 pull-ups is a lot less of your 1 rep max. So if it's less, it's going to be easier to get more reps. And then we did some other stuff. Let's work on some speed. Let's not leave anything on the table. If we can develop all these different areas, it's going to make you more efficient, more powerful, and faster to do those pull-ups. And now he went from 8 pull-ups to 25 or something.
What if they're concerned about overtraining? So I'm going to add in the speed stuff. Is this going to take away from the reps I can do for the heavy stuff? Is this going to take away from my conditioning stuff?
Because it's so non-fatiguing, it shouldn't really take away from anything. It's going to depend on how much you throw into it. But like I said, those plyometrics work and some of those little sprints that we're doing at the beginning, some of that stuff is just going to help potentiate and activate my nervous system and get me ready. I'll throw that in on a strength day. We still do some of that, not as much, but we'll throw it in. We'll get your nervous system fired up and ready to go, and it's actually going to help you when you step into the weight room and you start doing your heavy movements as well.
Yeah, as an athlete who I'm not a professional level athlete or anything like that. If I do some bounding, like some speed bounding before I do snatches, I was doing that at one point, and all of a sudden my snatches got easier that day, and I was like, oh, makes sense.
Go faster, right?
Just add speed work in before you do strength. It's not fatiguing. It's gonna be just a little bit longer warm up, and now you're faster and stronger.
Oh yeah. Even if I'm not working on speed, finishing my warm up with something that is full speed, even if it is just like 20-yard sprints, I always go into the rest of my workout feeling like I'm fucking totally ready to go.
Yeah.
Like I don't feel like I just warmed up and I have to now go to squat or do cleans or whatever, and have to get the empty bar and do warm up reps.
Right.
I am fucking ready to go if I've done something that's truly full speed at the end of my warm up.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, and I don't think any athlete that I've ever worked with has understood that. They come in and they do their warm up, and a warm up to me means get your body kind of warm. And that's it. They go through the motions, and then it's like, and sometimes I educate them by jumping them back on the jump mat. I have them do their jumps, and then I have them, they do their warm up, and I bring them back to the jump mat, and I say, okay, go ahead and do it. And then we go through some plyos, we go through some stuff, and I bring them back to the jump mat, and they have 2-inch improvement.
Right.
And I say, so guess what? Those first 3 sets of plyos we did were completely wasted. That was your warm up. Because now we're actually at the point where you can exert maximum power, and now we're going to get something out of everything moving forward. So, and sometimes the light bulb goes on and they understand that, and they'll start incorporating that stuff into their warm-up. So when they do get under the bar and they do get in the weight room, they're actually getting something out of that stuff rather than, all right, I'm kind of loose, I'm kind of warm, let me jump in here and just get going. And, half of those people, me included, you'd get a quarter way into your workout, and now you kind of feel like going, all right, now I feel a little bit better, I'm ready to go.
Yeah, so, I get mad at myself if I'm in the middle of a conditioning session and all of a sudden my recovery improves. I'm doing
Right.
I'm doing like 10 sets of intervals, and then on the sixth set, all of a sudden, like
You feel
I
better.
noticed that my heart rate dropped much faster on between 5 and 6 than it did between 2 and 3, and I'm just like, shit, I didn't warm up enough. Like I screwed up my warm up. I think that a lot of people don't. Lately, I've been trying. Well, lately for a long time now, I've been trying to improve my warm up. I'm always looking for ways to improve my warm up. What are all the different aspects of warm up do you look at? Because I remember when I was 15 years old, my idea of a warm up was you got to get the blood pumping.
Right.
That
Yeah.
was it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, what are some other?
Walk on the treadmill for 10 minutes. That
Yeah.
was
Like,
my-
well, you know, I
Walk on
remember.
the treadmill and then hit the weight room.
Well, yeah, for baseball, it's like get on the airdyne for like 10 minutes and then start working out. Like start lifting weights then, or go throw the baseball or something
Yep.
like that. What are the different aspects of warm up? What are you looking to do when you're warming up, and how long does a warm up typically take?
So we'll go through usually 4 to 5 different components of a warm up. So I go through your thermogenic, and that's usually where most people stop. That's get the blood pumping.
Right.
You know,
Feel
get
hot.
get warm, get
Sweat.
loose, get a sweat going, and you can do whatever you want for that. Whether it's running around in circles, jumping jacks, whatever you enjoy doing. You know, then we'll get into some mobility stuff where we're going to take all the joints through full range of motion and really get prepped for whatever we're going to do. It doesn't have to be all the joints, but whatever you're going to be using later on. Then we'll go into some more activation type stuff, in specific muscle activation. If there's anything that is inhibited in you, particularly, we'll get into some stuff to really focus on those areas and turn those things on. And some of the stuff can be general because there's a lot of areas that general people need to activate. In terms of our posture, we need to work on activating all the muscles in our lower trap and all that. The fourth component is then the neural component. Like we're talking about, this speed training. Get the CNS, get your nervous system firing as high as it possibly can. So that's that missing piece in the speed.
That's where that sprint work might be
Exactly.
beneficial, or bounding right before
Sprinting,
you, yeah.
jumping, it really unloaded but really fast, and something that you feel woken up afterwards. And then the fifth component is a mental component. And that's something I incorporate in as well. And it could just be setting the expectation for what you're about to do in the weight room. It can be setting the expectation for that sparring session, that competition. But that's part of it as well. And I try to educate my athletes that, if they're just kind of slapdicking around, talking to each other, going through the motions, that's not part of our warm-up.
Yeah.
The warm-up is part of what we're doing. And it's not just getting warm. It's to prepare you for what you're about to do next. So you have to prepare your muscles, you have to prepare your nervous system, you have to prepare your mind, get all those things ready for whatever you're about to see next. Otherwise, you get halfway through the conditioning and you're like, oh, crap. I wasn't warmed up until halfway through because I did a warm-up, but I didn't prepare for what I was going to see next.
Yeah, that mental aspect, one of the things I've been doing recently that have been beneficial for that is nose breathing only during a warm-up, and then focusing on what's happening with my breath as I'm moving. So I'm doing my warm-up, and am I breathing fully as I'm crawling or something like that? I'm moving, and am I breathing fully each time? Or what I find is if I stop paying attention, if I'm thinking about something else or start talking to somebody, I'll notice that my breathing starts getting shallow. And then I'm like, oh, why is my hip popping? Oh, shit, I started thinking about something, got a shallow breath, things got disconnected.
Yeah, and that's great. I've never done that specifically, but I think that the mindfulness is what you're talking about, is being aware of what's happening in my body, being aware of what's going on, and you can use the breath to do that, focusing on that breathing. It takes your mind off of all that other stuff you had going on. And we'll do that with our general adults because they're coming in here, they're coming off of work, they're stressed out, they got all stuff going on. We want this to be the best part of your day. So when you come in here after work, let's go into something that's going to bring you into where we're at, focusing on your body, focusing on what we're going to do, and you'll leave here feeling a whole lot better. You'll get more of what we did here, and you'll leave here feeling a whole lot better. So finding whatever those little tricks are to bring that mindfulness into what we're doing and into your body is huge. And I use the breathing for that. It's a little bit different breathing practice, but I use that as well.
To follow that up, say, okay, you got me convinced. I run a gym that's not really that many athletes. Maybe they're doing some competitions, but it's general population for the most part. My class has got 20 to 30 people in them at a time. I can't do individual programming. Any exact examples of exercises or strategies that, okay, maybe I want to integrate some of this speed stuff in. How could I do this at the 20, 30 person level per class?
Yeah. I mean, at that point, it's going to be a lot of body weight stuff, but I used to run fitness boot camps for 30, 40 people. And a lot of the reason people liked my boot camps is because I was a strength coach. I wasn't a boot camp instructor. We did some jumping and we did some calisthenics and we did some shuffling and sprinting. So again, you got to be careful with your population. If you're dealing with 60-year-old women who've never really moved like an athlete, we're probably not going to be bounding.
30-inch box jump.
But
for 100, go.
you can have that whole group doing different body weight plyometrics in place, squat jumps for say, different variations of that same squat jump with rotations, single leg stuff, jumping out in front of you, jumping over something if you have small things, and then from there it's going to be different sprinting drills as well. If you have medicine balls, one of the things I do a lot in those big groups is, maybe we'll rotate into groups of 3, and one group is jumping, the other group is sprinting, and the other group is throwing something. So slam a ball, throw a ball, whatever it is, all of those things, as long as we're cueing everybody on doing it explosively and being fast, they're going to get that same adaptation or at least close enough.
Yeah.
Legit.
So similar to the warm-up, what about after the workout? Like, what does that look like for you? What's a cool down look like? You do mobility work, you do breathing practices.
So we have
What
a
do you do?
very specific recovery breathing practice that my fighters do. When they finish the workout, we might do some mobility work depending on who the athlete is. Or once we finish up, I focus on shutting it down. What they'll do is they'll put their feet up on the wall. We'll put a yoga block or something underneath their hips so that their hips are elevated slightly above their heart. And we do about 3 to 5 minutes of diaphragmatic breathing. So I've already taught them how to do that. And then part of what we do is bringing the mindfulness into it. I have them close their eyes and I have them count their breathing. So they'll count their inhalations. They'll breathe in through their nose, deep inhale down into the belly, try to expand their whole rib cage, hold for a second or two at the top, and then I'll have them hiss that air back out, and they'll count and try to expand. And I try to make a little competition, how long you can get those exhales to be, because we know that long hissing deep exhalation is going to drive a parasympathetic response and get them into that rest and recovery state. But it also, if they're counting, then it brings that mindfulness in and doesn't allow their mind to just wander onto everything. So we'll do that 3 to 5 minutes of that. And I tell them when they get up, they should feel like they're ready to go take a nap. And what that means is instead of being in that sympathetic driven state when they get in their car, and because a lot of my guys, they'll go teach jiu-jitsu till 10 o'clock at night, and then they don't sleep because they're so wound up, they can't sleep and they don't recover. So I teach them how to do this afterwards as well. I'm like, hey, by the time you leave the jiu-jitsu school, you should be feeling like you're ready to go take a nap. And that means we're already driven more into that parasympathetic state. And by the time you're sitting in your car, your body is already starting to recover instead of 3 hours later.
Yep.
Or if you have that 2 practices in a day, I want to make sure you're recovering by the time you leave your first practice at 11 a.m. before you get to that practice at 5 or 6. We want to maximize that recovery time. So, but we do the same thing with all of our general clients as well to get them, because stress is stress, right? So when they come in, if they're stressed out from work, they're stressed out from anything, all of those things are going to affect their recovery. So we teach them these little breathing practices they can do at the end of their workout or the end of a stressful day. And again, we want you walking out the door feeling here better than when you walked in.
So what you're saying is, let me recap that. I finished the workout. I'm on the floor, throwing up, sweating everywhere. As soon as I'm done throwing up, I walk out.
Exactly.
Is that right? Is that about right?
Nah,
what I heard.
You
Pretty
left,
much.
You left chug a shake.
Oh, chug my shake.
And take 3 pictures for your Instagram.
Missed. God damn it. I was close. I almost had that.
Social poster key.
Social poster
Yeah.
key. Damn.
What were you thinking?
I don't know how I missed that.
Yeah, and we'll usually have, sometimes they are finishing, they're out of breath, they're tired. So, and I tell them, don't go right away into the breathing because you're not going to be able to do it.
Like,
Recover, relax, we'll talk for a couple minutes, and then let's do our recovery breathing and then send you on your way so you're feeling good. And it allows us to put the cap on that workout too. I think it's really important, like I said, set the expectation at the beginning and then cap it off at the end. There should be that start and end to every single session with me so that they know what it should feel like, they know what to expect, they know what we're getting into from the minute they walk in the door because I've already set that expectation. And then at the end, we're recapping that it did feel the way it was supposed to. You should feel the way that I talked about, and now there's an end to the session, and you can go on your way, and your body's recovering. Again, you feel good, and that keeps people coming back.
Excellent. PJ,
Very cool.
thank you for this.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
It's been awesome.
Yeah, good to have you on.
Where can people find you?
You can find me online. I've got a website, coachpjnestler.com, which I don't really update that much because I don't know how,
Awesome.
but I'm learning quickly. Otherwise,
Websites are hard.
Yeah, I'm learning how to do it or outsourcing that and bringing somebody in who knows how to do it. Otherwise, you can find me on social media. I'm really active on Facebook under Coach PJ Nestler, or on Instagram at Coach PJ Nest 24. So really active on both of those things on social media. I post a lot of videos and content and stuff, so you
Tell
can
them
find me
about
there.
that. Tell them about that new video series you got on the Facebook. I think that's just I love it so much.
Yeah, so I just started a new video series called Training Day with Coach PJ on my Facebook page, and it's it's exercise that I'm currently using with my athletes, with my fighters, in whatever program, whatever phase we're in. I show you one of my athletes doing it, how they do it, because obviously it's a lot better than me doing it, and then I break down how to do it, how many reps we're doing, why it's important, and why you can use this in your training program. And then I'll finish it off with another clip of another one of my athletes doing it. So it kind of brings people into what I'm doing in real time. And then, I try to give them the tools to take whatever it is and use that for themselves or for their athletes, for their clients.
Yeah. And if you go to our blog, we're going to put in the show notes links to everything that you have going on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
great.
Because you also just released a training program for jiu-jitsu guys.
I did, yeah. I've released a training program called Submission Strength, and that's on fightcampconditioning.com. So that's for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu fighters, really, but it can be for any combat athlete, but it's a little more geared towards Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and that's a 12-week training program, and it's got everything you need, 3 days a week of training, anything that we just talked about, it's in that training program. So really, really good. Just launched that about a month ago, and I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah, very cool. That's one of my main focuses right now is jiu-jitsu, so I'm actually really interested to see that myself.
Awesome.
Excellent.
I'll get you a copy.
Very cool.
Yeah, and
All right.
again, we're going to link all this stuff on the blog, so check it out.
You can check out too. Tell them actually about the blog post that you wrote for their blog.
Yeah, so I wrote that
It's already
article, 6 speed and power strategies that you're not using, which we cover some of the stuff we just talked about, deceleration training. I think I talk about contrast training. Then there's a couple other things in there, and that's on the Barbell Shrugged website. So I think if you just searched that title or just PJ Nestler on Barbell Shrugged, you can find that article, which got a couple videos on there too. So it shows you how to do some of those deceleration drills that we just talked about.
Excellent.
Very cool.
Thanks.
Thanks, PJ.
All right, thanks for having me.
Cool.